be great if you can give an update here.
Right. So, uh, like I mentioned, we are seeing a return of, advertising activity from our competitors. Housing has been very, very aggressive for the last few months on all media. We were quiet for a while because the market was not in very good shape. But now that the market is sort of bouncing back, we are likely to get aggressive once again. How much will we have to spend on advertising? Frankly, will be a function of how much our competition ends up spending on advertising. We are very, very rational players. We are conservative, but if competition is aggressive, we will be forced to respond, and you will see our ad spend go up this quarter in 99 acres. By how much, it's hard to say. It will depend on, like I said, on what the others do. And every time you have somebody advertising and others are not, you see some share movements. But those are often temporary in nature, because once the other player starts responding, you sort of go back to ground zero. So in some sense, it's a bit irrational if everybody's advertising, because the market can only grow at a certain rate. It's impossible to make the market grow much, much faster. But then that's how it is. The other question regarding strategic investment. See, we've been investing in the four spaces we operate inside Info Edge: jobs, real estate, matrimony, education. We've for a while had this strategy to invest in adjacent sort of areas outside the company, right? So we made a few investments in education. We have invested in a company called No Paper Firms. We've invested in a company called Univariety. We've invested in Coding Ninja. We've invested in an HR services company. We've invested in Teal, which is a real estate sort of software company. We've just announced another investment in real estate in a startup. They're doing a B2B sort of play in the broker tools sort of category. So this is and we acquired iimjobs last year, as well. So this is an important part of our strategy. There's a lot of opportunity in every vertical. We know that we can't do everything in-house. We've been upping our investment in innovation. We've been upping our investment in product development. Across our four verticals, we have close to 700 people working in product development roles. But there are opportunities everywhere. And so every time we see a company which looks interesting, and but we don't want to do it in-house at that point in time. And but at the same time, we want to sort of be in that market. We don't want to sort of lose that market. If we find a good startup, we invest. That's how we are playing this right now. Hopefully, over time, we'll find some synergies between our sort of properties and the companies we're invested in. For example, we are trying out something with Teal, a real estate sort of analytics company we invested in, to see if we can, offer an additional service on 99 acres to our users using their sort of data and their algorithms and their search. We've tried something with one or two education companies as well in the past. So we'll sort of, but the long-term sort of ambition here is to sort of be in multiple adjacent sort of spaces as well. Now, if you look at Naukri, there's a bunch of stuff we're doing in-house, like we're doing the blue collar job portal in-house. We're doing RMS in-house. We've sort of done First Naukri in-house. But there could be other opportunities outside. And if we don't think we can do them in-house, or we don't have the resources, or we want to focus on something else, we would rather invest in them. And then maybe 3 or 4 years later, we'll see what to do with them. So that's the strategy, strategic investment strategy. If there's something we can sort of take in and scale up, we would rather acquire, right? So there's something which, we believe we can add a lot of value to immediately. And if we take them in, then we would rather acquire. Like, for example, iimjobs. So despite the slowdown in the hiring market, because we acquired iimjobs and we sort of threw the might of our sales team behind it, we were able to grow our revenue from iimjobs, or billings from iimjobs, 35% last quarter, right? So if we see something which is a direct fit, which is more in the area in which we already operate and which we can scale up tremendously, then we would rather acquire. If adjacent areas, we would rather invest, watch how these companies do over a 3, 4, 5 year period, and then see what next after that.
Sure. Thanks, Hitesh, for the explanation. Just one small follow-up, since you mentioned about iimjobs. Is the growth in billing there a reflection of the verticalization of recruitment, or is it that you were able to extract synergies because of your sales processes being far superior? And can you give some more color on how this came through? Did iimjobs reach more number of customers who currently use Naukri?
Yeah. So it's primarily that. See, of course, there is the product is very solid. It's rock solid. It's it's a good brand. Not only do they have iimjobs, they have another product which is sort of getting good traction called Hirist, which is a tech hiring platform, which they've been working on for a while. But what we were able to do, was to so basically take them to many more customers over the last 9 months. We merged the two sales teams. We merged the iimjobs sales team with the Naukri sales team. iimjobs was working with maybe a few hundred customers because they had limited reach, because they had only a handful of people in sales. But we had, like I said, we work with 75,000 companies. Maybe a few thousand of them can use iimjobs. So that's something we do really well. We have a solid sales engine. And through this engine, we took iimjobs and Hirist. Hirist is still sort of a tiny brand, but getting there to a lot of our customers. And because the product is rock solid, when they started using it, they liked it. And, and we hope to continue to do more of this in the coming quarters as well.
Okay, thank you. All the best.
The next question is from Anmol Garg, Motilal Oswal. Anmol, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey, hi, good evening. So just had few questions. First of all, can you give any update on the cash that we have raised through QIP?
Chintan, you want to take that?
Sorry, say again?
Cash raised through QIP, an update on that.
What's happened to it?
No, there is nothing much has happened in terms of the utilization of that fund. I mean, we already had cash of roughly around 1,500 crores when we raised this money, right? So we continuing, and if you see that even in Q1 in the top, at the midst of COVID, the peak of COVID, we were cash generating. Q2 also we generated cash, and in Q3, in fact, we generated on YY basis cash, which is more than what it was in previous year. So we are cash generating. And that is despite of the incremental investment that we are doing in branding and marketing in matrimonial business. So we have cash surplus, and we have not done anything very specifically from the QIP fund so far.
Anything in the pipeline that we have that we can acquire from the cash that we have raised?
Well, I mean, that's part of our strategy that we will continue to invest through our PNL. And PNL, as I said, that we are generating cash, as well as it can happen through our balance sheet. Some of the small strategic investment that Hitesh just kind of talked about in a previous question. I think some of those investment will continue to happen from this. But if something, large acquisition has to happen, we can use this cash. But there is nothing so far that we have anything to announce here.
Okay, sure. And secondly, my second question is towards 99acres and towards the strategy that we are adopting from the same. So in general, where do we expect our marketing dollars to be? Will it be towards having more brokers on the website or towards the house owners? And still the listings are down by sort of 20%. When do you think that we can be at the previous year levels?
Yeah. So, we sort of target both dealers and owners. It's actually free for owners. If owners can list for free, dealers, of course, have to pay to list, and they buy subscription products. And so our goal is to get all sort of genuine supply onto the platform, irrespective of which source comes from. So it could come from a dealer, it could come from an owner, it doesn't matter to us. But we want all the listings in one place. Because that's what gets us our traffic. Now our marketing campaigns will target everybody. Again, anybody who wants to list a property we'll encourage them to do that on 99acres and make it easy for them. Listings are not back as yet because the broking business the brokers are taking some time. One, of course, we've been toying around with the business model as such. What was happening earlier was that we were getting a lot of repeat listings because brokers, to get more inquiries, used to post the same listing a few times. And now in some of our markets, we have moved to a different model. We are encouraging our clients to move to a different model where we are saying, listen, why don't you boost your listing instead of posting it again? So if so hopefully it will result in less spam. So that one that there's a shift in model there. We are trying out some new things in a few markets. And as a result of which, brokers are boosting their listings. So they're consuming the same number of credits, but they are posting fewer listings. The other is, of course, brokers have been slow to get back onto the platform after COVID. What we've seen is actually a surge in supply from owners. We've seen more owner listings on the platform. Owner listings, in fact, up 20-30% over last year. On the other hand, broker listings are down 20-30%. But slowly brokers are also getting back. So now the market is actually a lot more open than it was 6 months ago or 3 months ago. We are confident that all these brokers will also come back. But yes, because of the change in model, you may still see fewer broker listings than earlier.
Sure, Hitesh. Thanks. This is very useful.
Next question is from Sanjay Bhargava. He is from Bharosa Club, co-founder. Sanjay, go ahead and ask your question. Sanjay, you're there?
Sanjay is on mute.
No, he's not unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Sanjay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a very small investor in Naukri. I just invested and I just hold 750 shares. But one of the things I was intrigued about was I used to be on the founding team of PayPal, and PayPal looked at both sides, the consumers and the merchants. So I don't understand Naukri's business that well, but there seems to be a lot of focus on the merchants or the businesses. So is there also a focus or a planned focus on individuals and then being able to give them a whole suite of products which they can use? Because that may be a pretty good growth strategy for Naukri. So I just wanted your comments on that. Was there any thinking on that side?
Sanjay, when you say individuals, you mean job seekers?
So I mean everybody, because I think Naukri serves individuals for many things: matrimonial, real estate, job seekers. So it serves a bunch of people and touches them in different ways, right? So So and also in the budget, you have now people saying that we are going to go into the gig economy, and the gig economy people are going to get pensions and so on and so forth. There may be PF. Maybe at some stage there'll be a universal pension. So even I'm an employer in some ways because I employ domestic staff. I may have to pay them a pension. Maybe a long way off, but that's what I was.
Yeah. So the way we sort of are organized and the way we run the various. So we have different portals. So we don't have one common platform for jobs and real estate and matrimony. We don't have all of them on one sort of platform. We have different URLs, different platforms for these 4 verticals. The Naukri business is focused on recruitment, white collar recruitment. The 99 acres business is for real estate listings. For matrimony listings, we have Jeevan Sathi, and for education sort of content and classifieds, we have Shiksha.com. And they sort of don't talk to each other. These businesses work independently. They have separate teams, separate targets, separate goals. Everything is like different. That's how we operate right now. And to answer your question in all our verticals, we have actually the way we are organized, like in Naukri also, we have one team working on the recruiter side, right? Which is because we are a marketplace, like you said, 2-sided marketplace. We have a bunch of people working on building products for recruiters. And at the same time, we have a bunch of people working on building and improving products and improving the user experience for job seekers. Ditto in 99 acres, ditto in sort of matrimony and Shiksha as well. Of course, what we offer on the platform, the kind of products we offer, the kind of services we offer are, guided by our sense of what we think, makes sense and what we think is relevant at this stage. Like I mentioned earlier, and we are also, while we are trying to do more and more stuff inside the company, we just launched a job board for blue collar workers. We launched an AI-based tech platform for tech hiring. We acquired iimjobs for premium job seekers. We are working on a recruitment software product. At the same time, we're also investing in adjacent areas outside the company, right? So that at some point in time in the near future, over a 4 or 5 year period, we can maybe look at offering even more services to our audience. So that's the strategy we are following right now. Maybe it's a little different from eBay, because I guess eBay was one platform and you had all kinds of buyers and all kinds of sellers on one platform. Our approach is a little different. It's more vertical rather than horizontal.
Yeah. May I add something? May I add something there?
See, Sanjay, if I heard your question correctly, look, we have got some candidate services, but 98% of our job seekers who come to Naukri, they don't pay anything. You're allowed to put your resume up for free, you're allowed to apply for a job free, everything is free. Do we see a big thrust in candidate services where it becomes a big part of our business? We have no products in the pipeline which will suddenly lift candidate services to where anywhere near the revenue that we get from employers is, to answer that question.
Yeah, that's fine. I wasn't suggesting that you charge candidates, but I'm saying that if you have many more consumers or individuals and whoever pays, so you just like telecom firms measure an ARPU, an average revenue per user. It doesn't matter who pays, whether it's a consumer or the business. It may be something interesting to look at, but I'm not sure. So
yeah, Sanjay, you're right. See, we have products like Sanjeev said for job seekers, and it's only maybe 1 or 2% of the job seekers who pay for those products. But in absolute numbers, they're actually higher than the number of recruiters who pay. It's just that the ARPU is much lower. Ticket size is much lower.
Yeah, please carry on.
You are through, Sanjay?
Yeah, I'm through.
Thank you so much. The next question is from Rishit Parekh, Nomura. So Rishit, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity. Just 2 questions from my side, right? First, on the blue collar market, Hitesh, could you provide just a little more color on what could be the opportunity size? What is the initial due diligence that you would have done that, how big can the potential market be, let's say, over a next 5 to 10 year perspective, right? And can it be bigger than where we are from, let's say, the enterprise jobs perspective? That's the first. And second, just from the investee companies or Jeevansathi including, right? What is the next, let's say, 3 to 5 year potential value add that you see? Is it going to be EdTech? Is it going to be Jeevansathi, which could potentially drive more value from where we are today? Thank you.
See, the blue collar market, it's very hard to say how big that market will be 5 or 10 years from now. Clearly, in terms of volume, it's a much bigger sort of segment than the white collar market. If there are 50 million or 100 million white collar workers, the number of blue collar workers are maybe 4 or 5x or 10x of that number, right? So in terms of volume, it's a very large market, but it's unclear how monetizable it is. It's unclear what ARPUs will be like. It's unclear what the unit economics of that sort of space will be. And which is why we're taking baby steps, which is why we have sort of just test marketing in Delhi to see what kind of response we get. Once we sort of figure out the lay of the land, and in the short term, we are not even looking at monetizing aggressively, because we just want to ensure that we build the right product and we get traction and we get users, and we are able to get people hired through our system. Once we cross that sort of hurdle, then we'll think about monetizing. Yes, of course, if you look at China, if you look at other countries, these markets are very large, right? They're, the number one, for example, 58.com, which is the general classifieds portal in China, they do a lot more revenue than the number one job site in China, right? So, and most of the revenue is from real estate and jobs. Right? That's 80-90% of the revenue. But in India, unfortunately, that's not how it has played out till now, right? And up till now, nobody's been able to monetize the blue collar sort of workers or recruiters who hire blue collar workers. So some of these things, are the categories they develop when the economy reaches a certain size, and which is why, in my view, it's going to be very hard to monetize for the next year or two. But once this space becomes a little more organized, once you see many of these people entering into formal employment, once you see millions of small enterprises, finding it difficult, if they find it difficult to hire workers, and start using portals, then who knows? So hard to say. I mean, volume-wise, it's much, much bigger. ARPU's very, very low. And in fact, unit economics, question mark right now.
Okay, fair enough. And then just on the next value driver, potentially, what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Just from a 3 to 5 year perspective, right? What could be the potential value driver? Is it likely to be Jeevansathi, EdTech? or where do you think your bets will be?
See, one, we continue to see a lot of opportunity to grow in Naukri, right? Of course, it's going to be a function of how fast the economy grows also. But we are trying to add more and more sort of verticals. Like I mentioned, we have a campus hiring play. We're trying to do something in recruitment automation. We are trying to see how we can use more machine learning to improve the Naukri platform experience. We are trying to see what we can do on the data products side. So we believe that the recruitment opportunity is itself very large, and we still have a long way to go on that front. Number one, we see a huge opportunity in real estate in the medium term. See, real estate was in terrible shape for a long time because of various reasons, starting with demonetization, RERA, the NBFC crisis. A bunch of things happened. Plus, real estate, was anyway sort of very highly priced and so on. I think we are now again getting to a point where real estate is becoming an attractive sort of proposition. Prices have corrected, interest rates are low, rental yields are going up. And unless something every time I say this, something or the other happens, but in real estate. So I don't want to sort of make any forecasts here. But if the real estate market picks up for the next 5-10 years, and real estate is deeply cyclical, and we've been through a very long cycle. So if the market picks up, then it could sort of be a sort of big opportunity for us. Of course, we'll have to execute really well because, like I mentioned the call earlier, the market is competitive. We are a leader, but we are not a dominant player like we are in Naukri. So if we play our cards right, then we may be able to sort of unlock some value in that category. Matrimony is harder, because again, it's a 3-player market, is hotly contested, but here we are not a leader, we are number 3. We are, of course, cash rich, and we continue to invest aggressively, and we continue to gain share. But here, unless and until, there is some sort of action in like consolidation or something of that sort, it will be hard for any player in this space to sort of break away and create a lot of value. Education is, we've been surprised by what we saw in education this year. Our education business has sort of done well, despite colleges being shut, despite schools being shut. So we're going to start looking at it, and we've also trying out a bunch of new things in education. Tried out, we've sort of focused more on study abroad, for example, over the last few months. It was good results. It's always been the 4th business inside Info Edge, but it's showing some signs of attraction. So we're going to dive deeper and see what else we can do out there. Medium term.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Next question is from Manik Jagtiani. Manik, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, this is Lata Jagtiani. I'm his wife. Can you see me at all or what?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. You just need to hear me, right? Okay. I'm a small shareholder of your company. And I also happen to know Sanjeev earlier when I wrote a book, and he did ask for a copy of mine, which I mailed to him. But that's a part. I'm very happy.
I received that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's years back. I'm very gratifying to see the kind of work you're doing as far as employment is concerned. It's one of the major concerns in this country. But I was really concerned about the kind of multiplier you had on Zomato in the month of December. And then subsequently, there's been a lot of talk about your IPO coming up. So I just wanted to find out how far ahead this is, and is it something that we can expect sometime in September? If you could answer that, thanks a lot.
Yeah, Chintan, you want to take that question?
Yeah. So Zomato IPO, as you know that Zomato is an independent company with an independent board. And we have already it's public that they do intend to do IPO, and they are preparing for it. Right now, there is nothing more than that. I mean, they are under preparation. And when the Zomato board will take a final call, I think then only the IPO will proceed. So far, that has not happened.
Okay, so it's not even in the pipeline as of now?
No, they are definitely preparing for it.
Okay.
Right? But I can't really give you any indication as to the timing or any other details of that, because the board has not yet taken a call on that.
Okay, because there was some kind of buzz about September, so I was just asking. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next question is from Utkarsh Solapurwala from Damas Capital. Utkarsh, go ahead and ask your question. Utkarsh, you are there? So maybe I'll take the next question while he comes to the call. The next question is from Vishal from Inam AMC. Vishal, go ahead and ask your question. Vishal, are you there?
Vishal, you're on mute.
Maybe I need to take next question. Okay. The next question is from Krishna Apala from Capital Mind. Krishna, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks everyone for the opportunity. I just have three questions. First one is on 99acres. So, sir, we have recently become profitable at the operating level. So, how long before we see profitable at the PAT level for 99acres? That is one thing. The second one is on Shiksha. So post-COVID, we have seen increase in online classes in the entire edtech evolution. So are we looking to expand Shiksha universe or product offerings in this edtech space? On the third one, so we have an exceptional item of 703 crores on consolidated level. So can you please elaborate on that? What was it about? So these three questions from my side, sir.
Yeah, I'll take the first two, maybe Chintan, you can take the third. See, the 99acres, when will it become profitable at the PAT level, etc.? Very hard for me to say, will depend on two things. One, how fast are we able to grow top line, once the market recovers, right? So, if the real estate market starts to do well and we are able to grow at 25, 30, 40% per annum, then of course, it's only a matter of time before it becomes profitable. The other, of course, thing it will depend on is what the competitive intensity is like. So if competition is, starts spending a lot of money, if they start discounting aggressively, if they start, advertising like crazy, then we'll be forced to respond. So very hard for me to say how this will play out in the short term, right? Our endeavor, of course, we would like to be as rational as possible, but the number one thing we have to defend is our traffic share and our market share. So we would not, no matter what, we can't afford to let go of that. In Shiksha, you said EdTech is becoming a big part of the story. You're absolutely right. There are now lots of players in EdTech, lots of courses on offer. And Shiksha was primarily targeted at, university and college, as in physical sort of colleges and courses. But we've been working on developing an offering to sort of help people figure out what options in EdTech are out there. Actually, that offering was built under the Naukri learning sort of brand, and we've made some progress in that area. And the idea why it was built under the Naukri learning sort of brand at that time was because in the beginning, some of these courses were mostly for working professionals, while Shiksha targets students. So Shiksha is more targeted at students in class 11 and 12 and students in college for, who want to do an MS, while the Naukri learning offering more targets working professionals who may want to upskill themselves, right? So that's something we've started working on. It's actually, you can go to Naukri and check it out. It's you can search for Naukri learning on Google and it'll take you there. But still it's early days for that offering. We're just getting started.
Because we are cash rich on the company level, and Shiksha, I think we can expand the universe, of course, keeping our financials and the profitability in mind. Anything you're looking at the inorganic space, sir, from the edtech offering?
So we made a few investments in some education companies. We've invested in a company called No Paper Forms. They're basically an education software provider to universities and colleges. We've invested in a company called Univariety. They sort of sell software to education. They have education offerings which target school students and schools. And we've also invested in a company called Coding Ninja, which is basically an edtech player. They teach people, think of them as an NIIT online. So these are 3 investments we made in the last couple of years. And so let's see how these play out over time. But you're absolutely right. There's a lot of opportunity in edtech. In fact, edtech is the one category which has benefited because of the pandemic, right? And but it's also very competitive, and there are large funded players in edtech. So we have to be careful about how we play it.
Right. So just last question on the one-time exceptional item.
Yeah. So there's this one large entry as an exceptional item on console. So if you follow Ind AS, at the time when you are consolidating financials with your associate companies, and if the associated companies have kind of raised money and your stake is diluted, what you really do is that, on the one hand, there is a loss of, stake that you have. And on the other hand, if the dilution happens at a premium, then you are gaining in that process, right? So that's the kind of a gain which, we are required to be taken into a P&L account. And that's what the, exceptional item, in the console is. And that's roughly around 700 crore. It's a large entry because Zomato raised about roughly around 400 million during the quarter.
Got it. Got it. Thank you so much, sir. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question is from Pooja Ahuja from Quintis Wealth. Pooja, go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think we lost. No. Pooja, you're on mute.
Am I audible now?
Yes. Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So my question was regarding the matrimony business. The leading player is sort of getting aggressive in the northern markets. They've launched new portals. So how are we planning to tackle that? What's your thought process there?
See, the number 1 player is in the country is actually the number 3 player in the north. And you're absolutely right. They have become a little more aggressive in recent times, and they've launched a few new portals, but they already have some 250 portals. It's not as if they've had these portals for a very long time. But in this business, it's hard for a number 3 player in any market to sort of make serious inroads in a short span of time. They will have to invest considerable money if they want to make inroads in the North Indian market, is our sense.
Got it.
We continue to be aggressive in the market. And so is Shaadi. So both us and Shaadi continue to be aggressive in this market. So, and often what happens in matrimony is that it's also about, it boils down to what is your share of voice when you're advertising. So if the number 1 and number 2 players are very aggressive, even if you become slightly more aggressive, it doesn't really make a difference. You'll have to become very, very aggressive for you to gain share.
Got it. Thank you.
Next question is from Srinath V from Bellwether. Srinath, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Hitesh. Just want to find out some qualitative feedback on traffic growth in our key sites like Naukri and 99, say year on year or versus Jan. Any sort of qualitative feedback you could share, that would be great.
Yeah, so in the Naukri business, we're seeing massive sort of growth in traffic. Registrations are up 25%. Were up 25% last quarter. Applications are up 20%, 25%. Number of unique applicants are up 20%. Mods are up. So on the job seeker side, all metrics are growing at a very healthy rate. App downloads are up maybe 30% over last year. So we've seen this surge in traffic. On the job seeker side also actually got affected by COVID in the first quarter. When there was a lockdown, we saw for the job seekers also leaving the platform, but they've come back with a bang in the last 2-3 months. That's on the Naukri side. And similarly, on the 99acres side, we are seeing a massive jump. We've seen a massive jump in inquiries, right? So the number of responses on the platform, especially for resale, are going through the roof. In some months, we've seen even 50% growth. In some markets, in some of the smaller cities, we've seen 80%, 90% jump in inquiries in real estate. So on the user side, we are comfortable. In Shiksha also, we've seen massive growth in traffic. We've gained a lot of share, in fact, over our competition in terms of traffic over the last few months. On the matrimony side also, we've been investing aggressively in marketing. So our user base, our number of active user base has been growing at over 20% year on year.
Thanks, Hitesh. That's nice to hear. Sanjeev, just wanted to understand, as in the quarter post the QIP, you had spoken about capital allocation in concentric circles within our core portfolios. That's where you would kind of look at M&A activities, and at best, in classified, something like auto would be a complete outside opportunity. So just want to understand,
I think I had said auto would be a second concentric circle. It's not the closest concentric circle.
Yeah. And so just want to find out, how do we stand now? Is deal pipeline an issue, valuations an issue, or are we kind of just going to wait it out and take a year or so? And
look, conversations take time to fructify and mature, especially when you're talking about largest acquisitions. So I think it's a bit of a conversation and waiting game. We've not dropped the ball on that one. If just want to assure you.
Sure. So that basic strategy is in place, and that's
right.
How you're approaching.
We are committed to that strategy. We are committed to that strategy. Let's see where it goes.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And the next question is from Hari from Hillfort Capital. Hari, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for taking time to answer my question. My understanding is that the price, when I look at the pricing package of matrimony players in India, right, they seem to be around 4,000 to 5,000 rupees for 3 months. While the global players the ARPUs are far lower, I think around $10 to $15 if I am not mistaken. So I was just wondering does this mean that the matrimony services in India, are they sort of pricing out the average user, and is there sort of a pricing intervention possible to drive conversions from free users to paid users?
4,000 to 5,000 is often the list price, but I'll tell you, at least in the north and west where we operate, we are not a very big player in the south. What the consumer ends up paying is a lot less, because most of these sort of services are heavily discounted. If Jeevan Sathi were to start generating 4,000, 5,000 rupees per transaction, we would be double the size we are today. But in the south, you're right. In the south, because matrimony.com is leading player, they have maybe 70-80% of that market. They are able to command a price premium, and they're able to charge 4,000, 5,000 rupees per user per ticket. Having said that, let me tell you, see, the real estate, the matrimony market is very different from the dating market. It's a very high involvement category. The entire family gets involved. It's a very big decision, and people don't mind paying a lot of money if they get the right service, right? So it's and the people who are sort of active in this market are also older, so they can afford to pay. Most of our users are 27, 28, 30 years old. And in the dating market, on the other hand, I don't know how it is overseas, but in India, at least, the audience is much, much younger. So there, people are not willing to pay that much money on a monthly basis. Also, you have to understand that dating users often stay in the market. They come back, they go, they come back again, and so on and so forth. So ARPUs for some reason are lower. But because matrimony is a very high involvement category, entire family gets involved, it's a very big decision. You end up spending 20, 30 lakhs on a wedding. What is 20,000 rupees to pay to get the right partner, right? It's not a big deal if you provide the right service. Why matrimony sites, in fact, can charge much more than what they charge today? It's just that there's too much competition in the market, and therefore they end up discounting.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
The next question is from Deep Shah from Ambit Capital. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you for the follow-up opportunity, Vivek again. So first question is on the billing for Shiksha.com. We see that this has increased sharply in the last 2 quarters and has recovered. I think it's at lifetime high, right? So what is going right for us in this business now, and what are the interventions that we took reacting to COVID? Possibly. Second question is on the gross margins following the trend of several small customers of ours now doing online payments for recruitment real estate, I'm sure, where the sales effort needed to renew low value transactions might have come down. Does that materially change your gross margin? And lastly, Sanjeev, if you could discuss about the performance of your older investees, excluding Policybazaar and Zomato, like Shop Kirana, Ustra, Qkey, and so on. Thank you.
Right. So Shiksha. So listen, so it's not as if we did anything because of COVID. It's just that we continue to invest aggressively in creating the right kind of content for our users. It's mostly a content business. We've upped our investment in content. We're getting more reviews on the platform. The platform has become more stable. It's become, as we are sort of trying to see what we can use from Naukri also in terms of content to help people solve problems of students. We've launched some new tools on the platform to help students understand, what they can do with their careers and so on. So it's just that we are more focused on providing the right kind of content on our platform than we were earlier. We had taken our eye off the ball a little bit in Shiksha. We are back to, sort of doing the basic stuff right. We've also started, making small inroads in, study abroad counseling. Of course, it was actually hit by COVID this year because many of the countries were shut for a while, but we expect that business to also do better going forward. So it's basically just, more focus on the customer, more focus on content, more focus on sort of solving the problems that the Shiksha is supposed to solve. And that seems to be yielding good returns for the time being. It could also be that, because of the pandemic, and because everything has become more digital, education institutions are more open to this idea of spending more money online. A lot of our customers have upgraded in a big way this year, because maybe they're more comfortable spending money online than they were earlier. So that's on the Shiksha side. Sorry, what was the second question?
The second question was on gross margins, and
okay.
Hitesh, you made a comment earlier, so I wanted you to elaborate.
Yeah. So it's material in terms of number of customers, but it's not very material in terms of revenue, because some of the low-paying customers are the ones who buy products online and buy our services online. It helps us get new customers into our fold. So it's good from a long-term perspective because it brings down our, business development costs. But it's not material revenue. So it's unlikely to change our margins in the short run.
Right. And Sanjeev, on the investees.
Yeah. So look, Shop Kirana continues to do well. It is, servicing its customers. It bounced back to, it's much higher than pre-COVID levels. It continues to track well, but it'll take time for it to sort of really scale up and be valuable, right? Ustra got around from, IIFL Ventures, and it's back up to 70 to 80% of pre-COVID levels, but still some distance to go before it gets back to pre-COVID levels. Business, which used to be called Shoe Connect, is doing rather well, and that is showing real promise. And as is Gramophone. But so these companies are shaping up quite well, actually. So none of our investors have really been hit by COVID to a point where they had an existential crisis. And now they all bounced back or are bouncing back.
Okay, thank you.
Next question is from Srinath V from Bellwether. Srinath, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, just want to understand the real estate sector landscape more from a long-term perspective. So it has been a market where you have builders, brokers, and platforms like us. So we have been enabling the customer to the builder or the customer to the broker, and it's been a structure that has kind of survived now the test of time and it's done well. But of late we are seeing these end-to-end players like Square Yards coming in. Also building a technology platform, also having heavy call centers and acting as a broker and a kind of building up a tech platform. So I just want to understand, again, 3-5 years out, how do you see this landscape playing out? And do you feel we also at some point of time would we did have all check deals and so on. So would we also need to morph into a person completely carrying the transaction and not just enabling a handshake? Just want a kind of a long-term view on the same. Thank you.
So see, the real estate market is large and complex, and we operate in a lot of verticals within real estate. So we have a resale vertical, we have a new home vertical, we have a commercial vertical, we have a rental vertical. Now, Square Yard is basically a big player it's a big brokerage in new homes, right? And now they're trying to sort of build a tech platform, etc. And I don't know if they're still clients, but they were a client at one point in time. But see, the truth, it'll depend on what shape or form the market takes. If the market starts getting concentrated around a few brokers, then our model will get challenged. So if, there are 5 players like Square Yard and between them, they have 70% of the market, then it's an issue. But today, for example, we work with, a few thousand developers. We work with, a few hundred channel partners. We work with 25,000 resale brokers. We work with owners also directly. So if the real estate market goes in a direction where there are more and more sort of dealers in the market, there are more and more developers trying to do their own thing online, there are more and more channel partners, then it's good for us because we are a marketplace. Now, on the other hand, if the market starts to consolidate around a few dealers, right, or around a few channel partners or around a few developers, then that's not good news for us. That's, broadly the way we see it. Most parts of the world, consolidation in real estate is very, very hard. I mean, in resale, it is almost impossible because the mom and pop shop business, there is no, today there is not even one real estate sort of chain, a brokerage chain for resale in this country, right? Not even in a city, forget about a national chain. New homes is easier. It's easier, but even that, beyond a point, it's very, very hard for somebody to get, more than a 2, 3, 4, 5% share of the market. You see more different channel partners active in different parts of the country. You see there are nuances. It's hard to figure out if you're not close to that market, which projects are going to sell, which projects are not going to sell. But at the same time, can real estate tech brokerages sort of exist online? Of course they can. I mean, there's Redfin in the US. There's a Zillow, but there's also a Redfin, right? So, but marketplaces exist everywhere. So that's a tried and tested model. How big marketplaces will become in India will ultimately be a function of how big the real estate market actually becomes. Because if there is a lot of home ownership, then what you see is a lot of activity in terms of buying and selling of old homes as well. And for a real estate platform of the type we are to do really well, we want a resale market to develop in this country. That's not, new homes is not enough. New homes is where we'll get our revenue for the next 5-7 years. But in the long run, what builds a network effect is a resale platform. Where we already have an advantage, we are the largest, we have a big lead, but we want that piece to become larger and larger over time. But there is no reason why different models cannot coexist in the market over time. Will we become a broker at any point in time? Unlikely in the near future, but if the market, like I said, moves in that direction, then we'll be forced to revisit our strategy.
Yeah, look, may I add? See, 99acres morphing into a share of transaction model and therefore facilitating, enabling and handholding each transaction is a bit like asking that should Naukri morph into a headhunting firm, right? You can't be a marketplace and then one headhunting firm. There are about 8,000 recruitment firms that are clients of Naukri. There are, I don't know how many tens of thousands of brokers who are clients of 99acres. So it's going to be hard. You can do a separate venture if you want. A separate vertical if you want, which does that. But 99acres to morph into that is going to be hard.
Thanks. That was very useful. Thanks a lot.
So next question is from Utkarsh Solapurwala from Damos Capital. So Utkarsh, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead and ask your question.
So can you explain our thought process on the Naukri Learning, the vertical you have launched recently, and are there any plans to monetize it?
No. So we are already monetizing, but it's early days. What we are trying to do is see if we can build a marketplace of online sort of courses, right? Now, for any marketplace to succeed, there have to be, to start with, you have to have a lot of online courses available for people to be able to sort of compare and choose and research, them. Now, because the edtech market has, so Naukri, learning has been around for a while. It is just that the edtech space was not so hot, and therefore we were not focusing on it. But given that we are seeing a lot more activity in edtech, there are a lot of course providers now, right? There are many more online courses available than was the case earlier. We have sort of started investing a little more in this platform. So we've got a guy running the show. He's doing a very good job. We made a lot of progress over the last few months. But still, we have a long way to go. It's nowhere close to where we would want it to be. We are generating, our business model is lead generation for the edtech providers. We have a few large customers. We are doing a lot of business with them. But it's still, so we're monetizing, but it's still very, very tiny.
So we'll be able to use the job seekers data that we have to suggest them the necessary updates that they should do to their resume.
Yes, that's the idea. That's why we actually built it under the Naukri sort of umbrella, because we believe that most of these edtech courses which are there on Naukri Learning will be used to upskill job seekers, and we can use our Naukri data to recommend to them or to help them sort of understand which skills are in demand, what courses are in demand, and sort of guide them to take the right decisions over time.
Thank you, sir.
Next question is from Manoj Bajpayee from Barclays PMC. Manoj, go ahead and ask a question. Manoj, you are there? I'll take next question in the meanwhile. Next question is from Dhiresh Pathak from GSAM. Dhiresh, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah. First, can you give the cash balance?
Sorry, you want to know the cash balance, Dhiresh?
Yes, cash balance, please.
Chintan, what, 3,500 crores?
3,500 crores,
including the cash balance with our subsidiaries.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I understood from some of the other questions that you answered, that when you raised the money during QIP, it was as if, we had the impression, at least some of us had the impression, that the transactions would close quite soon. And, given the confidence that you were showing at that time.
No. Actually, I thought I had clarified specifically that these things are lumpy, they're opportunistic. We have some ideas, but they will take time. Could be 12, 18 months, anything. Is what I remember clearly saying. I don't know. I want to clarify that right now, that look, these things take time.
That also, it came with those conditions like you're saying now, that these things take time, but it sort of, we came out with some sort of an impression that you will close, in the coming quarters, maybe not immediately. And now, as I understand correctly, I mean, you're still in that process, right? But I mean, how would you characterize, the timelines from the time at the, QIP fundraise versus now? Has it moved forward? Is it still there? Is it backward? Like, how would you characterize it versus that time period?
So we've had some more conversations. We must have met at least another 10, 15 companies over the last few months in different spaces, right? And we've had a few conversations. There are some small deals which, could happen at any point in time. But the large ones, like Sanjeev said, are, lumpy and opportunistic. It takes time to cook a deal. And often it's a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. So, these things are not easy to execute. We are still hopeful, but, I won't say that we can't give you a clear timeline right now.
Sure. And on 99acres, so without being a broker, what are the other things that you can do which can, sort of, like you said, you've cleaned up the listing, so spamming is less. So what are the other things that we can do to build more trust and, provide consumers with some sort of a standardized processes, which brokers like developers can be more, organized, but broking community is quite fragmented and everybody has their own set of things they do. And there is less trust among the buyers. So how can you as a platform create more standardization and more trust around that without being a broker yourself?
It's a good question. See, what you have to understand is that the real estate market in India is very, very opaque. There is unlike the stock market where prices are available every day, you know what sort of stock is worth, how much. I mean, in real estate, very hard to figure out what the prices are like, what the last transaction was like, what is the going rate, and so on and so forth, right? So now 99 acres is sitting on a ton of data. We have asking prices for the last more than 10 or 12 years now. We've been in the market. We are increasingly getting better. And, we've invested in a company called Teal, for example. Now, Teal is doing a lot of real estate analytics. They're in the business of title checks and litigation checks and some of those things, right? So, I think one sort of big area of work for us is how do we make the real estate market more transparent, to both buyers and sellers. Sometimes owners are not able to sell because they ask for the moon. Even owners don't know what going prices are like. So just because they bought a property at a certain time for a certain price, I think they should get that price, or they should get 50% more, 100% more. So, so what happens as a result is there's a big gap between what buyers and sellers are willing to sort of accept, and therefore transactions take a very long time. So if we can make the market more transparent, if we can provide more information to people, if that information is credible, reliable, trustworthy, the velocity of transactions in real estate can improve, right? And if that starts to happen, then that'll be a very big win for everybody. So that's an area which we would want to work on for the next couple of years and see what we can do on that front. We've already got a team working on a few things. Let's see if we can make progress on that front. In addition to this, we can sort of work with our clients to help our sort of buyers, prospective buyers, identify which are the good dealers on our platform, which dealers are sort of good in a particular area or in a particular geography. So some of those things we can do to highlight, the top dealers in a particular locality or in a particular geography, because so many of them, right? So there's a bunch of things we can do. We have a few ideas. I can't discuss everything here, and we are working on some of them. For example, we just launched reviews on 99 acres. Now, there's a lot of information available on, again, opaqueness, right? So now we're getting reviews on societies, on localities. So sitting at your home, you can sort of figure out what people are saying about different societies. What is life like in, let's say, in Sector 150 Noida? What is life like in this particular block, in this particular area? So a lot of these kind of things we'll do, and we are working on already to sort of just make it a more engaging and a more attractive proposition for buyers, so that anybody who's looking for property, buying or selling property, should say, listen, let me start with 99 acres.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Hitesh. Thank you.
The next question is from Manoj from Barclays PMS. Manoj, go ahead and ask a question.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for the opportunity. And Hitesh, my question was largely on a very broad level at the segment level, or probably the sectors, because medtech and edtech, these are the two very sought after segments a lot of people are working upon, including you. Beyond this, what is your sense that a couple of more sectors or areas you guys are looking at very closely, which may become very big over next 3 to 5 years time frame? Secondly, the second part of question was, do you have any sort of cap to the number of investments you are going to make in next 6 months to 9 months? The reason I'm asking is about to check on the available management bandwidth to focus on the investment which you guys keep on doing. So I think currently you are at 23 or 24, I'm not sure. But is there any cap which you are looking at for year by year, or you don't have that kind of numbers in mind?
So you see, internally we are focused on just 4 categories: recruitment, real estate, jobs, and matrimonials for the time being, right? And this is where, and education for the time being. And this is where we spend in the operating team, this is where we spend all our time. We are not looking at, new categories to enter as an operating business. From an investment standpoint, yes, we continue to look at all kinds of opportunities, and we are more bottoms up in our approach. So we look at what comes our way and then invest accordingly. But as an operating business, we are going to just focus on these 4 categories for the next at least 18 to 24 months. Right. As far as, maybe I can let Sanjeev can talk about what he's seeing in the investment sort of on the investment scene. But to answer your other question, how many companies we could invest in going forward, because we already have a lot on our plate. See, what we've done over time is we've separated out financial investing from strategic investments. So we have a separate team looking at our strategic investment portfolio where we have 5 or 6 companies only. And we have a separate team looking at our financial investment portfolio, which is now a large part of which is now under the AIF, right? So we have separated the two. For acquisitions and strategic investments, it's the operating team which works with the strategic investment folks. And for the financial investment piece, it's Sanjeev and the AIF team which work together. And there, of course, we have 15, 17 companies. Maybe I'll let Sanjeev comment on that as well.
Yeah. So look, I think it should summarize better how we organize this. The financial investments team is 6, 7 people. I mean, it probably will not go beyond 10. And the fund is $100 million. So you're talking about maybe 15, 20, 25 companies over the next 3 years.
Sanjeev, you want to talk about what you're seeing on what new opportunities?
So look, we don't do it top down. We do it bottom up. So we don't sort of go and say, hey, we've got to look at the sector now. We've got to do one company in this and one company in that. We don't give quotas and targets of that fashion. We simply say what's bubbling through, just meet everybody. So we meet dozens of startups every week, maybe 100 or so every month, maybe more than that even. And, beyond that, we study others without meeting them. Maybe do phone calls. And right now it's all Zoom calls anyway. So you do a few hundred to invest in 1 or 2. Right? And there's spaces we've liked, but if the company's not right, the founder's not right, or the valuation is not right, we don't do it. As simple as that. And there'll be spaces we'll miss, and we'll live with that. That's okay. But we want, we do it bottom up, like I said.
Thanks. I think that was quite helpful, Sanjeev and Hitesh, and all the best. Thank you. Thanks very much.
That was the last question we had. Any other question, please?
There are some online questions, Hitesh, just in case you want to take that.
Okay, let me just take a look at them.
There's a question of Vishaka Jain.
2 questions. 2 questions, basically.
Vishaka Jain actually has come onto the call.
Okay, I'll take these questions. So, impact on billing due to COVID for Naukri mainly. Do you still enjoy 8 times premium pricing to your competitors? Highlight on other ventures like Happily. So, we never charge 8 times of our competition, but COVID has not impacted our leadership. In fact, if anything, our leadership has got strengthened during COVID because we've gained share over our competition. So hopefully that will translate into more pricing power also in times to come. Advertising on 99acres to generate revenue from Karan Jariwala. We are mostly focused on real estate advertising. We don't want to digress into sort of other areas. We've done that in the past in Naukri. It's never a substantial part of never became a substantial part of our business, and you need to invest in multiple other things to make it happen. So for the near future, we're going to be focused mostly on real estate advertising on 99acres. Yeah.
On Happily Unmarried, I mean, like I said, it's back to what 70-80% of pre-COVID. Most of our companies bounce back nicely. Whether it's Zomato, Policybazaar, Shop Kirana, Gramophone, they're bouncing back nicely. Some have bounced back to above pre-COVID levels. So it's doing all right. Now, Hitesh, there was a question on advertising in 99acres and other stuff.
I took that. I said we are focused mostly on real estate ads. We're not looking to go outside real estate. Acquire revenue. We don't think it can be material in the short term.
So I guess we're done.
Vishaka has raised hand again. Vishaka, you have any question? Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi guys. Sorry to interrupt. As Hitesh just mentioned that it is not 8 times. I don't remember, like in one of the earlier calls, I read that you enjoy premium to your competitors' price. So could you just highlight like what is the premium pricing you enjoy right now currently in Naukri specifically?
To be honest, we've not been, because we believe we have a close to 80-85% share of the market. We don't really face any competition when we go out and sell to our clients. So actually don't even know what competition pricing is like. I'm sorry right now.